53 million Americans drowning in cycle of low-wage work. We are at a point now, there is no going back. We are in very, very deep water here in America. It's Sunday, November 10th, 2019. It is a beautiful evening on this beautiful Veterans Day weekend, and God bless our vets. I want to just make a really quick video today, as I know most people are real busy over the weekend. But this article on Zero Hedge, 53 million Americans drowning in cycle of low-wage work. I think it's really important to go over this article because it pretty much sums up how massive the problem is here in America and how bad the economy really is, and how it's going to be impossible for America to have a vibrant economy that's going to survive this collapse if all we have is service sector jobs, low paying wages, no manufacturing. A country that makes nothing is not going to be a world superpower very long. As I said, we are in very deep water here in America, and we are in a point now where we are past the point of no return. And this is why it's imperative that every one of you be preparing. Let me go through this article here for you a little bit. I'm going to paraphrase. 53 million Americans, or about 44% of all U.S. workers between the ages of 18 and 64 are considered low wage and low skilled. That's literally almost half the workers in America. Ask yourself, what are we going to do with all these people who are in this country that shouldn't be here? MIT just did that study a couple months ago saying that there's 22 million people here in America that should not be here. And yet almost half of Americans now are working low-wage jobs and low-skilled jobs. AI and technology is going to replace many of these jobs. Unemployment is going to start ticking up in America, and the question is, what are we going to do with millions upon millions of people who aren't even from this country, but they're here? What are we going to do as the jobs continue to shrink and technology takes over? Many of these people are making approximately, now get this, this isn't America, this isn't a third world country, we're talking right here in America. Americans are making approximately, in this category, $10.22 per hour, and they bring home less than $20,000 per year, according to a Brookings Institute report. How in the world are people surviving? This is why we continue to see homeless, the homeless numbers increase at an outstanding rate. And you know, when I was in Slab City last week, people just believe it can't happen to them. They just think that that's only for people who have mental deficiencies or drug issues. No, places like these tent cities that are popping up all over the country, people that are making low wages, who are low skilled, whose jobs are going to be replaced by AI and technology, they're going to be heading to tent cities, unfortunately. And if we don't do something about this soon, a lot of people in America are going to be living in tent cities. We're going to see most of America living in third world type standards, as I can drive an hour and a half from here and be in Los Angeles and show you places of LA that look much more like Zimbabwe than they do Los Angeles. They are beyond third world. They're literally fourth world countries now. Trash everywhere, rats everywhere, medieval diseases running wild, violence running wild, crime running wild. This is what it brings. If people cannot make a decent wage, if we do not manufacture and make things here in the United States of America, this country is going to be in massive trouble, and we know it's in massive trouble right now. An overwhelmingly large percentage of these folks have insurmountable debts, including student loans, auto loans, credit cards, you name it. Their wages don't cover their debt servicing payments. Most are just paying the interest and having a hard time just doing that. Most of these people are just servicing the debt. They're not paying down the principal, and they're getting deeper and deeper into debt. And these are the people who are one flat tire away from being in very big trouble. They're a medical emergency, a visit at the urgent care to get 10 stitches, and these people are done. So this is really absolutely out of control. These people won't stand a chance when this next recession hits America. Recession, economic collapse, Great Depression, it's going to be severe. And these people right now are drowning in debt. They can't get ahead. 44% of US workers. And remember, we have roughly around 100 million people in America that aren't even in the workforce now. So it just really gives you something to ponder, something to think about, that right now we haven't even had any serious issues yet because the Fed's been propping everything up and putting multiple Band-Aids on multiple gunshot wounds. Sooner or later, they will run out of Band-Aids, and we are going to see very turbulent times in America. So while half of the country is being decimated by low wages and debt, and also don't forget, inflation. I know that the media likes to tell you there's no inflation, but if you don't believe there's any inflation, you haven't been to the grocery store lately. You haven't looked at rental prices or mortgage prices or auto prices or clothing prices, you name it. Everything is going through the roof, and the average American is having a very hard time keeping up. That's why now Americans are forced to rent televisions or rent appliances or rent clothes, lease cars, because they cannot keep up with the cost of these items. The top 10%, though, are partying. They're partying like it's 1999, according to this article. Most of these people have assets like stocks, bonds, and real estate, and these people have been prospering with the help of the government and the Federal Reserve that continues to prop up these asset values in the stock market, in the real estate market, all being propped up, allowing these people to have a very, very nice life. At some point, though, people are going to revolt with this massive inequality, this massive wealth inequality. And people are now there's people waking up every day. I believe more people are waking up than falling asleep. And they're waking up and they're seeing these travesties that are taking place. They're seeing the top 10%, especially that 1%. These people are getting all this money at the very top, and they're not spreading it down below. They're buying, $50 million penthouse apartments. They're buying $200 million jets and $300 million yachts and $100 million ranches. And so they're not spreading it into the economy. As I've said many times, they're leaving no meat on the bone for the average American. And yes, we quite possibly could see a massive revolt here in America, but by then the average American doesn't have anything left. And this is why I'm so adamant with making videos telling people to make sure that they are preparing, because when that day comes, you don't want to be starving. You want to have food, you want to have water, you want to have security, you want to have real money. You don't want to be revolting while you're starving or while you have no money or no security. Make sure that you take this day and this time to continue the preparation. I do believe at some point there will be a substantial amount of Americans who wake up out of their comas and understand that this wealth inequality cannot continue forever, that America cannot continue, will not have a future with $10 an hour jobs. It will not have a future without manufacturing and production. People are waking up to the fact that unelected officials and governments have ruined the economy, and this has resulted in the financial misery of low wages and insurmountable debts that the average American now is dealing with. And at the same time, they are taxing the average American into oblivion. And they're literally turning the average American into debt slaves. Between the average amount of debt that people have and the average amount of taxes that they're paying, there's no way the average American can get ahead. China, and remember this, we keep hearing a lot about the China trade negotiations. China doesn't want this to change. They want the typical American to be a debt slave. They don't want the average American manufacturing, working at a plant, making things. They want the average American dumbed down. They want the average American to continue to be a debt slave as they continue to quite literally take over the government of the United States of America. They want to see America fail so that they can become the world reserve currency, so they can become the world superpower, this communist regime who quite literally basically wants to take over the world, and your world will be much different than it is now if China is allowed to do that. And I certainly don't ever want to see that day come, but China wants to make everything. China now, they're saying, is holding 20,000 tons of gold. If that is true, does America have 20,000 tons of gold in Fort Knox? More than likely, it does not. So China is a huge threat to America, financially, militarily. And if we do not stop China right now, we're going to have big trouble down the road with China. And your living standards, unfortunately, are going to change for the worse. Let's go over the top 10 low-wage occupations here in America. Let's look at what the typical American's having to do for a living. Well, we have the retail salesperson. That makes up 4.5 million jobs. Info records clerks. That makes up 2.9 million jobs. Cooks and food preparation workers, 2.6 million. Building cleaners and janitors, that makes up 2.5 million. Material movers, 2.5 million. Food and beverage servers, 2.4 million. Construction workers, 2.3 million. Out here in California, typical construction workers making $10 or $12 an hour. Material dispatchers and distributors, 1.9 million. We've got motor vehicle operators at 1.8 million, personal care and service providers. These are people that check on your 80, 90-year-old mom at the house, make sure that she has a box of tissues and cooks her something to eat. It's a $10, $12 an hour job, 1.8 million people doing that. So this is where we are at with this service-based economy, and yet people will write me and tell me that the job market is booming in their town, and most of these people live in towns probably the size of Mayberry. But these are national numbers. If your town is booming and there's jobs above $10.22, God bless you. If your town's doing great, wonderful. But is your state doing great, or is it bankrupt like most of them? Are the pensions in your state unfunded like most of them? At the end of the day, your country is bankrupt. It's $23 trillion in debt, $200 trillion in debt if you include unfunded liabilities, Medicare and Medicaid. So no matter how good your income is in a small town of Mayberry, at the end of the day, your country is in massive trouble, and the nationwide numbers are horrific. The Fed and government have a solution to preventing you from getting upset, from having a revolt, from having chaos in the streets. What are they going to do? They're going to continue with more quantitative easing and socialism. They're going to pay people. They're going to pump up the markets. They're going to prop everything up. And, if they have to print out more government subsidies to keep everybody on the plantation, then that's what they're going to do. How long do you think this is going to go on before it doesn't? So as the country continues to go down the toilet bowl, Zero Hedge today, California approves $3.2 billion high-speed train to nowhere. So while LA County has 80,000 homeless people roaming the streets, people living in RVs all over the streets of Los Angeles, also sleeping in their cars. It's just an utter mess. It's a disaster. The whole city of Los Angeles is a disaster. The state of California is bankrupt, massive amounts of debt. The streets are falling apart. Rats are running wild all over Los Angeles, in the courthouses, in the state buildings. They're running everywhere. We have the second highest population of rats, only behind Chicago, and Chicago's a whole nother mess. People in this state can't afford health care, but the state approved $3.2 billion bond for a high-speed train to nowhere. Americans should be absolutely livid, but I don't think they're going to get livid until they get hungry. So I'm going to wrap it up right here. A little bit more news. There is confirmation that those Mormon families was not mistaken identity. There was no confusion. These Mormon mothers and children were shot at point blank range in a targeted assassination by cartel gunmen as brutal murders prompt Americans to pack up and get out of Mexico. That's on thedailymail.com. And so, you know, so many people would tell me, well, when it gets bad here, I'm running down to Mexico. You will not be safe in Mexico. If they think you have money down there in Mexico, if you're an American, you are not going to do very well. You are not going to fare well in most countries being from America. So it's a reminder that when things hit the fan here in America, when they get bad, there's probably nowhere to go. We're going to be here and we're going to have to deal with it. There's really nowhere to go. So the main thing you can do is pray and prepare. But I don't think we really have great friends down there in Mexico at this point, as that government has been hijacked by the cartels. And we have a government here that is being hijacked right in front of our very eyes. And if it is not stopped, America is going to turn into a Mexico. It is going to turn into a third world country. It is going to be run by cartels. And we see who those cartels are now. The question is, can they be stopped? Will enough Americans stand up for this country and demand that they be stopped? Have an incredible weekend. Have a great Veterans Day tomorrow. God bless all the people in the military and the service and everybody that gave their life for America. God bless you. And you know, when this thing falls apart in America, we may need a lot of those people in the service to be on our side so that this country doesn't fall in the wrong hands, in the hands of the globalists, these demonic beings that want to destroy America. Because once they have America, they have the entire world. God bless every one of you. Make sure you're praying for this country. I know a lot of people watching this hate America. I love America. It's not perfect, and I don't love this government, but I'll tell you, I love this country, and there's no other place I would rather be, and I will die for this country. And I know a lot of you watching this would do the same thing. We are not going to let America just be taken away from us. God bless.